At 8:15 a.m. on March 31st, 2023, Madeline Kingsbury sent her last text message. No one realized this ordinary Friday in Winona, Minnesota would spiral into one of the state's most chilling investigations. As evening descended, her sister Krista stared at her phone, watching messages pile up unanswered, something unprecedented for the usually responsive 26-year-old mother of two. The day had started routinely enough. Madeline, known affectionately as Maddie, dropped her children at daycare alongside their father, Adam Fravel. But when her friend knocked on her door that evening, she found Maddie's minivan sitting empty in the driveway, her phone abandoned inside the house, and her work bag untouched, signs that would soon take on a sinister significance. Adam's account of that morning quickly began unraveling. He claimed they'd parted ways after daycare, saying Maddie had a meeting before heading to work in Rochester. She would take his car, he said. Yet his car remained in the driveway, and her jacket hung untouched in the closet. Between 9:45 and 10 a.m., surveillance cameras captured Adam doing something suspicious, methodically switching the license plates between Maddie's minivan and his own vehicle. By 8:20 p.m., with Maddie still unreachable, her family contacted the Winona Police Department. Officers arriving at her residence found a house frozen in time, everything in place except its owner. But as they began digging deeper, they uncovered a disturbing pattern of behavior that had been building for months. What emerged was a story far darker than a simple disappearance. In the weeks before March 31st, Adam had shown an obsessive interest in another missing persons case, that of Gabby Petito. He had made comments that now seemed less like casual conversation and more like foreshadowing. And in the 24 hours before Maddie vanished, he had systematically disabled all location tracking on his devices. The peaceful city of Winona, known for its stunning river bluffs and close-knit community, was about to become the epicenter of a case that would reveal how domestic abuse can hide behind closed doors, how obsession can turn deadly, and how a seemingly perfect life can mask a nightmare in the making. As spring temperatures rose and snow melted away, one question haunted investigators. What happened in those crucial hours after 8:15 a.m.? The answer would prove more disturbing than anyone could have imagined, leading to a culvert near a rural gravel road, where a family member's property held a secret that would break the case wide open. Behind the headlines of Madeline Kingsbury's disappearance was a woman whose achievements belied her young age. At just 26, Maddie had built an impressive career at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, where she worked as a clinical research coordinator. Her colleagues described her as meticulous, dedicated, and always eager to learn, traits that served her well as she simultaneously pursued a master's degree in public health administration at the University of Minnesota. Born June 1, 1996, in Winona, Maddie was the youngest of 3 children. Growing up alongside her sister Megan and brother Stephen, she developed a reputation for being the family's bright spark. Her childhood friends remember her as the one who could light up any room, whether she was organizing study groups or planning weekend adventures. This natural leadership would later define her professional life. What made Maddie's accomplishments even more remarkable was that she achieved them while raising 2 young children, aged 5 and 2. Her mornings began before sunrise, coordinating daycare schedules and work meetings. Evenings were spent between bedtime stories and master's degree assignments. She moved through life with a determination that inspired those around her. At the Mayo Clinic, Maddie's work involved coordinating complex medical research projects, a role that demanded precision, interpersonal skills, and unwavering dedication. Her supervisor would later tell investigators that she never missed a day of work without notice, making her silence on March 31st all the more alarming. But beneath this picture of professional success lay a more complicated personal life. While Maddie excelled in her career, she struggled with a relationship that increasingly showed signs of toxicity. Friends noticed how she would brush off concerning incidents with practiced casualness, always finding ways to explain away the unexplainable. Text messages recovered from her phone revealed a woman trying to maintain normalcy for her children while quietly planning an escape. In the weeks before her disappearance, she had been researching apartments in Winona, saving listings in her browser, and confiding in close friends about her plans to leave. She had even begun seeing someone new, a former college classmate named Spencer, though she kept this relationship carefully guarded, knowing how Adam might react. Her sister Megan would later tell investigators that Maddie had a habit of seeing the best in people, even when they showed her their worst. This quality, admirable as it was, may have kept her tethered to a situation that was becoming increasingly dangerous. Despite her professional success and growing independence, Maddie remained committed to making things work for her children's sake, a dedication that would ultimately put her in harm's way. In her final weeks, Maddie had started leaving digital breadcrumbs, screenshots of threatening messages, notes about concerning incidents, and conversations with friends about her fears. It was as if some part of her knew she needed to create a record, even as she continued to navigate her daily life with characteristic grace and resilience. These glimpses into Maddie's life would later become crucial pieces of evidence, painting a picture not just of who she was, but of the mounting tensions that preceded her disappearance. Her story would serve as a stark reminder that success and strength don't make someone immune to domestic violence. Sometimes, they can make it harder for others to see the danger hiding in plain sight. Behind Adam Fravel's outward appearance of a stay-at-home dad lurked a more complex and troubling figure. After losing his advertising job during the 2020 pandemic, Adam's life took a sharp turn, but not toward domestic responsibility. Instead of stepping up to support Maddie, who continued working at Mayo Clinic while pursuing her master's degree, he retreated into a world of video games and mounting obsessions. Former classmates from Winona State University remembered Adam as an unremarkable management information systems student who dropped out after Maddie became pregnant with their first child. While she pushed forward with her education and career, he drifted between jobs in digital advertising, never quite finding his footing before the pandemic gave him an excuse to stop trying altogether. But it was his growing fixation with the Gabby Petito case that would later send chills through investigators. In autumn 2021, when the story of the young vlogger's disappearance and murder dominated headlines, Adam became consumed. Friends reported how he would analyze every detail, watching news coverage repeatedly, speaking about Brian Laundrie's actions with an unsettling familiarity that made them uncomfortable. His digital footprint revealed a man increasingly losing grip on reality. While claiming to be a devoted father, he spent up to 12 hours daily gaming, leaving household responsibilities to Maddie. His browser history showed repeated searches about domestic violence cases, particularly those involving missing persons. Yet, in police interviews, he maintained a carefully constructed facade of normalcy. The controlling behavior escalated gradually. He demanded access to Maddie's phone, monitored her whereabouts through location tracking, and flew into rages when she mentioned her new friend Spencer. In one particularly disturbing incident, he pinned Maddie down and referenced the Petito case, saying she might end up like Gabby if she didn't learn to mind. When later questioned about this, he dismissed it as just a joke, his voice carrying an unsettling casualness. Financial records painted a picture of complete dependence on Maddie. While she worked tirelessly, he contributed nothing to the household income. Yet he maintained control over their finances, closely monitoring her spending and questioning every purchase. What caught investigators' attention was his intense interest in Maddie's workplace death benefit, a $170,000 policy he had inquired about multiple times in the months before her disappearance. Most telling were his actions in the 24 hours before Maddie vanished. With methodical precision, he disabled location tracking on every device he owned, removed security cameras from their home, and began laying groundwork for what he likely hoped would be an airtight alibi. These weren't the actions of a panicked man in the heat of the moment. They were calculated moves by someone who had studied other cases and learned from their mistakes. Adam's behavior after Maddie's disappearance further raised red flags. While her family organized searches and her sister launched a viral TikTok campaign, he remained notably absent. His statement through his attorney claimed police had advised him not to participate in searches, a claim investigators would later dispute. He positioned himself as a concerned father while actively avoiding the community's efforts to find Maddie. The picture that emerged was of a man who had spent months, perhaps years, preparing for a moment of violence, studying other cases, learning from their errors, and meticulously planning his actions. His obsession with the Petito case wasn't just morbid fascination. It was research, And as investigators would discover, he had learned his lessons well, perhaps too well. Over 7 years, Maddie and Adam's relationship had become a textbook case of escalating domestic tension. What began during their college days at Winona State University as an unplanned pregnancy forcing them to stick it out had evolved into a complex web of financial dependence, emotional manipulation, and mounting fear. Their dynamic shifted dramatically after Adam lost his job in 2020. While Maddie threw herself into her career at Mayo Clinic, Adam retreated into their home, but not as the supportive partner she needed. Friends witnessed a parasitic relationship forming. Maddie worked full-time, pursued her master's degree, and cared for their 2 children, while Adam spent his days gaming, contributing nothing to household maintenance or childcare despite being home constantly. Text messages recovered from Maddie's phone revealed years of walking on eggshells. "I have to turn off my location when I visit Spencer," she confided to a friend. "Otherwise, he'll blow up my phone until I respond." Spencer, a former college classmate who had recently reconnected with Maddie, became a particular trigger point. Adam, who had been in the same fraternity as Spencer years earlier, couldn't tolerate even hearing his name. The financial imbalance created its own strain. As the sole breadwinner, Maddie shouldered all household expenses, yet Adam maintained rigid control over their finances. Bank records showed a pattern: Maddie's paychecks deposited, bills paid, and Adam withdrawing cash for what he called household expenses, but which primarily funded his gaming habits. Violence entered their relationship gradually. Then suddenly, a 2020 FaceTime call captured a disturbing incident: Adam striking Maddie across the face during an argument about household cleanliness. The friend on the other end of the call would later tell investigators this wasn't an isolated incident. Bruises appeared with increasing frequency, always with plausible explanations that grew thinner over time. Their cycle of breaking up and reconciling became notorious among friends. Maddie would gather the courage to end things, Adam would promise changes, and the pattern would reset. By early 2023, they were technically separated but still living together, a dangerous arrangement that friends and family had repeatedly warned against. Maddie's father had stopped speaking to Adam entirely, telling his daughter bluntly, "He's going to kill you." Her father's words, tragically prophetic, came after witnessing years of Adam's manipulation tactics firsthand. Yet Maddie, ever hopeful and concerned about their children's stability, continued trying to make the situation work. In the weeks before her disappearance, Maddie had begun secretly viewing apartments. Her browser history showed searches for single-parent resources and domestic violence support groups. She was planning an exit, but carefully aware that the most dangerous time in an abusive relationship is often when the victim tries to leave. The relationship's final days were marked by increasing tension. Adam had discovered Maddie's growing connection with Spencer, and his behavior became more erratic. Surveillance footage from their home showed frequent arguments, with Adam following Maddie from room to room, gesturing aggressively. Yet publicly, he maintained the image of a concerned partner, even as he methodically prepared for what investigators would later believe was a premeditated act. Their last day together, March 31st, 2023, began with a routine they'd established: dropping the kids at daycare together. But something was different that morning. Adam had spent the previous night disabling tracking devices and removing security cameras. He had studied other cases, learned from their mistakes, and was ready to ensure the separation would be permanent. March 31st, 2023, began with a deceptively normal routine in Winona, Minnesota. At 8 a.m., surveillance cameras captured Maddie and Adam dropping their children off at daycare together. This would be the last confirmed sighting of Maddie alive. At 8:15 a.m., she sent her final text message, a routine work-related communication that gave no hint of the horror about to unfold. What happened in the next few hours would later be pieced together through a complex web of surveillance footage, cell phone data, and Adam's increasingly contradictory statements. According to Adam's initial account to police, after daycare drop-off, they'd returned home where Maddie mentioned having a meeting before heading to work in Rochester. She would take his car, he claimed, while he used her minivan to transport items to his parents' house in Mabel. But surveillance footage told a different story. Between 9:45 and 10 a.m., cameras captured Adam outside their home engaged in a suspicious activity, methodically switching the license plates between Maddie's minivan and his own vehicle. This calculated move, investigators would later conclude, showed premeditation rather than panic. The critical 45-minute window between 11:59 a.m. and 12:44 p.m. would become the focus of intense scrutiny. During this time, Adam's movements couldn't be accounted for through any surveillance footage. The minivan was last seen driving south at 11:59 a.m., then reappeared driving north at 12:44 p.m. When investigators later drove this route themselves, they found the timing suspiciously precise, suggesting Adam had made no significant stops or detours during this window. Yet Adam's story kept shifting. First, he claimed he'd driven to Mabel, realized he had the wrong items, and returned home. Then he mentioned stopping at a storage unit. When pressed about the license plate swap, he had no explanation. His text messages to Maddie throughout the day, which initially appeared to show concern, began to look more like carefully crafted breadcrumbs creating an alibi. Back at their home, everything was eerily preserved. Maddie's jacket hung in the closet. Her work bag sat untouched. Adam's car, the one she supposedly planned to drive to work, remained in the driveway. Her phone, wallet, and ID lay abandoned inside the house. Nothing suggested she had planned to leave. Everything suggested she never had the chance. When police asked Adam about zip ties found in the minivan, his response raised red flags. Maybe her dad used them for repairs, he suggested vaguely, though investigators would later find the same type of zip ties in a recent purchase he'd made. The minivan's interior had been meticulously cleaned, too clean for a vehicle supposedly used for moving storage items. As the day progressed into evening, Maddie's absence became increasingly concerning to her family. Her sister Krista's unanswered texts accumulated. Her mother's calls went straight to voicemail. By 8:20 p.m., when police conducted their initial welfare check, Adam was notably absent, having taken the children to his parents' house in Mabel, conveniently removing himself from the immediate investigation. The timestamp on Maddie's last text, 8:15 a.m., would hang over the investigation like a dark cloud. In the hours that followed, Adam had systematically created what he thought was a perfect cover story. But like the switched license plates, each detail he arranged would eventually help build the case against him, revealing not a series of coincidences, but a carefully orchestrated plan with a horrifying conclusion. The evening of March 31st transformed from concern to crisis when Maddie's friend arrived at her darkened house at 8:20 p.m. With Maddie's minivan in the driveway but no response to knocks, the Winona Police Department received their first call about the disappearance of Madeline Kingsbury. The initial police response seemed routine, a welfare check for a missing adult. But within hours, red flags began accumulating. Officers noted the strange presence of all Maddie's personal items: phone, wallet, jacket, work bag. Her car sat in the driveway, yet Adam's story about her planning to drive his vehicle to work didn't align with the untouched scene. As dawn broke on April 1st, Maddie's sister Megan took an unprecedented step that would transform a local missing persons case into a national story. Her first TikTok video, raw and emotional, launched what would become a powerful social media campaign. "This is my sister, Madeline Kingsbury. She's missing. This is just very basic info we've put on flyers around town. Pause if you need to read more." The videos quickly went viral, drawing thousands of volunteers to Winona. Megan posted daily updates, each one more desperate than the last. Day 13, still haven't found my sister. Keeping Maddie's name in the news, her strategic use of social media created unprecedented pressure on both law enforcement and, unknowingly, on Adam. Meanwhile, the search effort expanded rapidly. Over 2,000 volunteers combed through the southeastern Minnesota countryside, focusing particularly on the routes between Winona and Mabel. Search teams navigated difficult terrain, steep bluffs, dense woods, and numerous water features that could hide crucial evidence. The investigation gained momentum when police discovered Maddie's phone data. Her last text at 8:15 a.m. became a crucial timestamp, marking the moment her digital presence abruptly ended. More telling was Adam's digital footprint, or rather, its suspicious absence. Investigators found he had systematically disabled all location tracking on his devices the day before Maddie's disappearance. Police interviews with Maddie's colleagues revealed another crucial detail. She had a significant death benefit through her employer, worth $170,000. Adam had inquired about this policy multiple times in recent months, a fact that shifted investigators' focus from missing person to potential homicide. The Kingsbury family offered a $50,000 reward, generating dozens of tips daily through Crime Stoppers. Each lead was methodically investigated, but one pattern emerged consistently: reports of a suspicious minivan in the rural areas between Winona and Mabel on the morning of March 31st. As the investigation intensified, Adam's behavior drew increasing scrutiny. While thousands searched for Maddie, he remained notably absent from all community efforts. Through his attorney, he claimed police had advised him against participating in searches, a statement law enforcement would later publicly dispute. By mid-April, the case had captured national attention. Megan's TikTok updates reached millions, drawing parallels to other high-profile disappearances. The pressure mounted as each day passed without answers, but investigators knew they were building something significant, a case that would eventually reveal how thoroughly Adam had studied other crimes, and how this knowledge would ultimately lead to his undoing. As investigators pieced together Madeline Kingsbury's final hours, a damning trail of evidence began to emerge. Like a puzzle slowly taking shape, each new discovery revealed Adam Fravel's careful planning and his crucial mistakes. Security camera footage became the investigation's backbone. Starting at 9:45 a.m. on March 31st, cameras captured Adam's first suspicious act, methodically switching license plates between Maddie's minivan and his car. This wasn't a panicked response to crisis. It was calculated preparation. When questioned, Adam had no explanation for the switch, marking the first crack in his carefully constructed narrative. Digital forensics revealed an even more telling pattern. On March 30th, the day before Maddie's disappearance, Adam had systematically disabled location tracking on every device he owned: his iPhone, iCloud account, car GPS, and even advertising trackers. He'd also removed security cameras from both their home and his parents' residence. These weren't the actions of someone reacting to tragedy. They were the preparations of someone planning one. The investigation's most crucial break came from a neighbor's trail camera. 10 days after Maddie's disappearance, footage emerged showing Adam driving a UTV through wooded areas near his parents' property, a shovel clearly visible in the back. This same area would later become the focus of intense police scrutiny. Inside Adam and Maddie's home, investigators found signs of hasty cleaning. A gray-fitted bedsheet was missing from their bed, a detail that seemed minor until June 7th. Additionally, in the trash at Adam's parents' house, police discovered Maddie's burned laptop and several of her electronic devices, raising immediate red flags. The timeline gaps proved equally revealing. Between 11:59 a.m. and 12:44 p.m. on March 31st, Adam's movements couldn't be traced. A 45-minute window that investigators determined was just enough time to drive to the rural location where Maddie's body would eventually be found. When police drove the route themselves, they found Adam's timing suspiciously precise. Cell phone records showed a complete cessation of Maddie's normal activity after 8:15 a.m. Her regular pattern of work emails, text messages, and calls simply stopped. Meanwhile, Adam's phone showed a series of seemingly manufactured text messages to Maddie throughout the day, messages that investigators believed were sent to create an alibi. Physical evidence mounted in the minivan. Police found zip ties matching those later discovered with Maddie's remains. When questioned, Adam claimed they might have been left from vehicle repairs, but store receipts showed he'd purchased them recently. The vehicle's interior had been thoroughly cleaned, inconsistent with its supposed use for moving storage items. Perhaps most damning was evidence from Adam's online activity in the months leading up to Maddie's disappearance. His browser history revealed extensive research into missing persons cases, particularly the Gabby Petito case. He had studied how other perpetrators had been caught, learning from their mistakes. This research meant to help him avoid detection, instead helped build the case against him. Each piece of evidence revealed not just what happened to Maddie, but how meticulously Adam had planned her disappearance. He had studied other cases, prepared his alibis, and thought through his actions. Yet, like so many before him, he couldn't account for every detail. And it was these overlooked details that would ultimately lead investigators to a lonely culvert near a rural gravel road, where Maddie's story would reach its tragic conclusion. On June 7, 2023, 1 week after what would have been Madeline Kingsbury's 27th birthday, the investigation reached its tragic conclusion. A deputy searching a rural area near a gravel road made the discovery that would confirm the community's worst fears and bring the intensive 2-month search to an end. The location itself spoke volumes. Property maintained by a Fravel family member, situated between the towns of Choice and Mabel, not far from Adam's parents' home. In a lonely culvert beneath the road, the deputy spotted something out of place. A gray fitted bedsheet, carefully wrapped and sealed with black Gorilla tape. It was the missing bedsheet from Maddie and Adam's home.
We are here today to announce that human remains were found yesterday in Fillmore County. This morning, the Southern Minnesota Regional Medical Examiner's Office performed an autopsy. Law enforcement has confirmed the remains are those of Madeline Kingsbury. Unfortunately, while this discovery is not what we were hoping for, we are thankful to be able to bring Maddie home to her family. Her body was found by a Fillmore County investigator on a remote stretch of road off Highway 43 north of Mabel at approximately 1:30 p.m. yesterday afternoon. Digital evidence collected by investigators led us to this area. It should be noted that the location of Maddie's body was off a low-maintenance public roadway and was not property owned by the Fravel family or any of their relatives. The area had been previously searched, but Maddie's body was covered and concealed in such a manner that she was not visible.
The scene bore hallmarks of careful planning. The culvert's location was strategic, remote enough to avoid immediate discovery, yet accessible enough for quick disposal. The choice of location suggested intimate knowledge of the area, and later investigation would reveal it was along the route captured in Adam's suspicious 45-minute timeline gap on March 31st. Forensics teams documented every detail. The Gorilla tape matched a roll found in the Kingsbury Fravel residence. The bedsheet was confirmed as the one missing from their bed. Most chillingly, they discovered zip ties had been used, the same type found in Maddie's minivan, which Adam had attempted to explain away as car repair materials. Dental records and distinctive tattoos confirmed what investigators already knew. They had found Madeline Kingsbury. The medical examiner's findings painted a grim picture of her final moments. A knotted zip tie around her neck indicated a deliberate, close-range attack. This wasn't a crime of passion. It was an execution carried out with terrible precision. The location's connection to the Fravel family proved crucial. Trail camera footage from 10 days after Maddie's disappearance had captured Adam in the area, driving a UTV with a shovel. Investigators theorized he may have returned to check on or possibly relocate the body, unaware of the camera recording his movements. The culvert's discovery also explained some of Adam's suspicious behavior that March morning. The 45-minute gap in his timeline aligned perfectly with the time needed to drive to the location, dispose of Maddie's body, and return to establish his alibi. His knowledge of the area had allowed him to act quickly and efficiently. The scene processing revealed additional evidence tying Adam to the crime. Soil samples from the minivan matched the culvert area. Fiber evidence from the bedsheet was found in the vehicle despite its thorough cleaning. Each piece strengthened the case against him, proving that even the most carefully planned crimes leave traces. News of the discovery spread quickly through Winona. The community that had spent months searching for Maddie now gathered to mourn her. The culvert, once an unremarkable feature of rural Minnesota, became a somber reminder of how domestic violence can hide in plain sight until it's too late. Hours after the discovery, law enforcement moved swiftly. Adam Fravel was arrested at his parents' home, the same property near where he had hidden his crime. As he was led away in handcuffs, The carefully constructed facade he had maintained for 2 months finally cracked, revealing the truth that had been evident all along. The arrest of Adam Fravel on June 7, 2023, marked the beginning of the legal proceedings that would bring justice for Madeline Kingsbury. Initially charged with second-degree murder, prosecutors quickly elevated the charge to first-degree murder as evidence of premeditation became overwhelming. In October 2023, Adam's trial began, unfolding like a carefully constructed puzzle being solved in reverse. Prosecutors methodically presented their case. The disabled tracking devices, the switched license plates, the suspicious 45-minute window, the burned laptop, the damning trail camera footage. Each piece of evidence revealed not just what happened to Maddie, but how meticulously Adam had planned her murder. The prosecution's case was strengthened by testimony from Maddie's friends about Adam's obsession with the Gabby Petito case. His chilling joke about Maddie ending up like Gabby now seemed less like dark humor and more like a rehearsal. The defense attempted to paint these incidents as misconstrued comments from a troubled but innocent man, but the pattern was too clear to ignore. The trial exposed the financial motive through evidence of Adam's repeated inquiries about Maddie's $170,000 death benefit. His unemployment, gaming addiction, and financial dependence on Maddie painted a picture of a man who saw murder as his path to continued financial security. The defense's attempts to explain away his interest in the death benefit fell flat against the backdrop of his premeditated actions. Throughout the trial, Adam maintained his innocence, but his carefully constructed alibis crumbled under scrutiny. The defense had little to offer beyond suggesting law enforcement had tunnel vision in focusing on Adam. They couldn't explain the mountain of evidence, from the matching tape and bedsheet to the soil samples linking the minivan to the culvert where Maddie was found. On December 17, 2024, the jury reached their verdict, guilty on all counts. Adam's final statement to the court, "I never caused harm to Maddie and I am innocent," rang hollow against the overwhelming evidence of his guilt. The judge sentenced him to life in prison, noting the calculated nature of the crime and its devastating impact on Maddie's children and family. The case's resolution brought changes to how Minnesota law enforcement handles domestic violence cases. Maddie's sister Megan's use of social media to maintain public interest became a model for future missing persons cases. The Kingsbury family established a foundation in Maddie's name, focusing on helping domestic violence victims with children plan safe exits from dangerous relationships. For the Winona community, the case left deep scars, but also sparked important conversations about domestic violence. Local organizations reported increased calls for help, as people recognized similar patterns in their own relationships. The Mayo Clinic, where Maddie worked, strengthened its employee support programs for domestic violence victims. Maddie's children, too young to fully understand the tragedy, were taken in by her family. The $170,000 death benefit that Adam had coveted was placed in a trust for their future education, ensuring that his final attempt to profit from Maddie's death instead became her final gift to their children. The case closed, but its impact continues to ripple through the community. Madeline Kingsbury's story became more than a tragic headline. It became a crucial reminder that domestic violence can hide behind seemingly normal facades, and that the most dangerous time often comes when victims try to leave. Her legacy lives on in changed laws, strengthened support systems, and a community forever altered by her loss.